Welcome back. We continue here. The testimony of alleged organized crime kingpin Vusimuzi Cat Matlala has turned the spotlight on a dark web of infiltration of the criminal justice system and the entanglement of high-ranking police officials with criminal gangs. Matlala appeared before Parliament's ad hoc committee probing alleged criminal infiltration in the criminal justice system. Let's shed more about this with Professor Kholofelo Rakubu from the Tshwane University of Technology. Prof, good to have you on the program this evening. And also, based on your expertise, what does the testimony of Vusimuzi Cat Matlala then reveal about the current state of organized crime networks, especially in South Africa, and also especially their alleged penetration into law enforcement structures?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. What we're getting from this explosive testimony is the magnitude of infiltration, the magnitude of cartel protection, and also the magnitude of the groupings or cliques within the justice cluster, power struggles, and all, you name it all. The compromised investigations and also financial gains, law enforcers pushing financial gains instead of the pursuit of justice, how communities were vulnerable, and also how decisions are politically motivated. So from the explosive testimony, we got to understand the kickbacks, although his testimony is not corroborated by any independent evidence, because remember, he made explosive allegations which are very serious, but they are uncorroborated at the moment. He described a very critical figure, a former leader in the police, as an extortionist, if I were to be precise. And that is very damning. And again, but then one also was, from his testimony, one also was forced to revisit Minister Cele's testimony because there was an admission of a particular gift or an exchange in the form of a penthouse. Now, admitting to that benefit, right, will undermine Cele's counter-argument to what, or counter-claim to what has been claimed by Matlala. Why do I say so? It undermines Cele's blanket denial of ever receiving anything from Matlala. Even if it wasn't monetary, right? It establishes, we already understand a relationship of benefit exchange in this regard. And this largely would make it difficult for Cele to come in and counter-argue, because now there's a contradiction risks and also the pattern evidence issues, because now Matlala argues the penthouse was part of the broader pattern of benefits, right? This makes his Matlala's testimony more plausible, even if not yet proven. So it is a very complex situation, and also, but remember, he admitted to receiving gift. Now, this contradicts Cele's earlier denial of any other exchange than receiving that gift of a penthouse, right? Now, in the bottom line, it was Matlala's testimony and credibility being strengthened in the midst of Matlala being a very controversial figure with criminal records who has more broader interests. So it is a very complex situation that we could pick from all these explosive allegations or testimony that taps into credibility crisis and perjury concerns, because the minister under oath indicated no exchange of monetary value, right? Now there's this also, although it is not yet tested or corroborated, and the next step for investigators will have to verify whether the claim can be substantiated with hard evidence. But it becomes complex because of the claim by Cele to have received a particular benefit.
Let's speak about that. Matlala alleges that former Police Minister Cele solicited up to 1 million rand from him, calling him an extortionist, like you say. From a criminal standpoint or a criminologist standpoint, what systematic weaknesses allow such alleged financial extortion between criminals and high-ranking officials to take root. What does it come as a result of?
It comes as a result of a compromised system, a politicized system. And it comes as a result of a system with lack of authority or compromised oversight mechanisms. Matlala got away with a lot in the system because of lack of oversight, highly or deeply infiltrated, compromised processes, compromised forensic, compromised investigation. So such a landscape makes it easier for this kind of benefits, for these kinds of exchanges or this kind of allegations, because for us to even arrive here, that is because the landscape suggests that this has been happening, this is possible. Remember what Mkhwanazi alleged, now it's being corroborated directly and indirectly that the system is corrupt, the system is infiltrated. Then now a critical figure agrees to receiving a particular gift. How do we then protect you as South Africans or take your side when you have openly agreed to take a gift from a controversial figure? But the system allows, because it is highly compromised, it is highly volatile, it is highly politicized, they are overstepping from higher echelons. Then who's Minister Cele? Because it might have been what other ministers have created. So it is now we get to understand the magnitude of infiltration, how exchanges happen, because this might not be the only financial gains or exchanges that the minister has received. So we are no longer sure. But remember, committees or commissions should rely on corroborated facts or independent evidence in the form of statements and so forth. But then he came with a different analogy to mention a Woolworth bag, which is very famous today. Now, when you carry that bag, there's an exchange of money. Now, for Minister Cele's counter-argument, I don't know what he has left. Besides that, the committee or investigators will have to dig deep to understand how this money was withdrawn, how this money was exchanged, the so-called secret son mentioned, how was this money transferred? Was it a hard cash? From which bank was it withdrawn? It might have been withdrawn for something else. And today, due to Matlala's caliber, Matlala's character, he has nothing to lose. And then the collateral damage might be Minister Cele. But again, it's difficult to even prove that Cele might be or collateral damage because of the nature of the gift. It did not even make sense to even agree to such a gift from a controversial figure. So today we are here, and what next?
What next? So how does this relationship between organized crime figures and certain police officials or officers, such as that alleged link between or involving Hawks officials, commissioners, and even crime intelligence, how does this reflect broader patterns of state capture, if you will, within the criminal justice system?
Remember, we've been crying about the failure or us not winning, South Africa not winning the battle against crime. Decisions are taken outside your normal offices or criminal justice cluster. Decisions are taken by the cartels outside institutions, and officers or law enforcers are unable to react or even implement all the beautiful strategies or mechanisms we have in place because of the infiltration. These cartels had a very magnificent way to capture leadership in the justice cluster. That is why we now talk of bails being granted inappropriately, and that was not even expected. Imagine an NPA being compromised. Imagine Hawks being mentioned in these kind of cases where they should have been protecting a South African, but it looks like they are shielding or protecting controversial figures. So, like I said, a compromised system, it's easier to manipulate. There's no crime control or crime prevention or a mechanism that will be presented in that space. It is not possible to even, because there will be no lack of political will because of political infiltration, and there will not be any other form of support from the policing leadership, because they are compromised. They are working against each other. As you try to police, others are policing you. So you police while watching your back. It can never work.
Yeah. But Matlala, very interestingly, denies being part of this so-called Big Five, the Big Five cartel, despite being charged with attempted murder, fraud, even conspiracy to commit murder. So how do organized crime suspects then commonly use narratives, if you will, of victimhood or even persecution to shape public perception?
Matlala looks like one of those that is very smart because from his testimony, he's removing himself from certain cartels or even the Big Five, like you're saying. And interestingly, he doesn't have relationship with you, Sibia and the Mohotsi and the likes, right? Now, how do you even take him and put him into the Big Five cartel? So that should be authenticated, that should be verified, that should be assessed extensively to link him up to this allegation of the Big Five, because he doesn't even have an idea of what could have happened to the missing man that has been mentioned. He doesn't even, although he agreed to have made payments to certain activities, to certain political parties, but he was very, very careful to share much. And that is why I would believe that he has, at some point, he has linkages to certain networks. That is why he made sure that certain controversial figures that were being central, that were extensively mentioned in other testimonies, he hasn't. He identified one and ran with that one, which is Cele. But how can he get away with that? Because he could, because he is highly connected. He is highly protected. You can even revert back to when he got that 360 million tender. Mchunu was not yet in the picture, right? Yet Mchunu, now yet we're pointing fingers at Mchunu. There were other ministers in the system. There were other officials in the system that assisted him. So it is a very, he's highly connected to a network that understood the magnitude of this infiltration that might have been operational for quite some time, because this controversial figure is even given that a name of a John Wick, which was highly problematic and mentioned in some of the controversial cases in your social movie and so forth. So we're dealing with a big fish, but that doesn't look like a big fish.
Professor Rakubu, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and your clear analysis of these deeply troubling but important issues, I must say. Your insights do help us understand not only the specific allegations around Vusimuzi Cat Matlala and the police, but also the broader systematic vulnerabilities that allow organized crime and corruption to indeed flourish in this country.